Muy buenas noches. Bienvenidos a Fundación Casa de México en España. Como siempre es un gusto tenerlos en su casa y en esta ocasión presentar la conferencia inaugural de la exposición Dos líneas fe del artista mexicano Stefan Brüggemann. Artista conceptual que explora el poder visual de las palabras y que al término de esta conferencia tendremos el placer de recorrer la exposición justamente aquí saliendo y también tener la posibilidad de convivir con el artista, con nuestros invitados de esta tarde y, ¿por qué no?, brindar con una copa y celebrar esta exposición. El día de hoy tenemos el honor de contar con la presencia de Mathieu Copeland y Lorena Pérez-Jácome, quienes nos relatarán los inicios del artista, así como la creación de esta exposición. Primero que nada vamos a presentar a Lorena Pérez-Jácome. Ella es comunicóloga de profesión, enfocada en las áreas de cultura, moda, entretenimiento, ejerciendo durante muchos años como conductora y presentadora de televisión, directora también de relaciones públicas e institucionales, escritora, locutora en su más reciente proyecto del podcast y actualmente creadora del Museo de Arte Contemporáneo Colegium, ubicado en Ávila, que también queremos hacer la cordial invitación para que asistan todos a Colegium con esta fantástica exposición que ha conformado Lorena desde hace ya varios años. También tenemos el placer de presentar a Mathieu Copeland. Él es comisario, conferenciante y editor, conocido por haber comisariado la muestra Vacíos, una retrospectiva, en el Centro Pompidou de París, y ha sido comisario en diversas exposiciones en Francia, México, Shanghái y Estados Unidos, solo por nombrar brevemente muchas de las participaciones que ha tenido en el ámbito de la curaduría. Yo no voy a entrar demasiado en la exposición Dos líneas de fe, para eso tenemos a estos grandes expertos. Simplemente, y para abrir boca, comentaremos que esta exposición es una instalación compuesta por 5 lienzos que muestran el marcador silencioso de algún acontecimiento significativo de la historia, que va estrechamente ligado con la religión y la cultura. Y en palabras del propio artista Stefan Brüggemann, la pintura religiosa fue quien le dio fe en el arte, ya que considera el poder del arte más sublime que cualquier religión. Ahora mismo veremos cómo hacen que estas palabras resuenen justamente en la exposición Dos líneas de fe. Como les digo, vamos a continuar con Mathieu y con Lorena para que ellos desentrañen este proyecto. Y como siempre, Fundación Casa de México en España les agradece su presencia y al terminar la conferencia, presenciar Dos líneas de fe y brindar por esta magnífica exposición. Muy agradecidos también con todo el equipo de Casa de México, que siempre se hace un trabajo impecable y lo van a notar en esta nueva exposición. Muchísimas gracias y bienvenidos a todos.
Okay. Vamos a decir que la plática se va a hacer en español, pero Mathieu va a hablar en inglés, entonces va a ser traducción simultánea. Y welcome to Spain. I think tú vas a empezar de una vez a hablarnos un poco sobre la trayectoria de Stefan.
Sí.
Muy bien.
And that was my Spanish. No, thank you. Well, welcome to Spain and welcome to Mexico.
Yes.
A little part of it here at the very least. And actually more than that, because we also have a transfuge with the exhibition itself coming here. So what I wanted to do today was to begin by giving maybe an untidy introduction to Stefan Brüggemann's practice. And the reason why, and I'm really looking forward to our discussion afterwards,
Of course.
Lorena, but it was really interesting for the past few days, all the conversations we've had. I hope you've had a chance to see the show. And if not, I really invite you to stick around afterwards for a glass of mezcal and to see the show. But nonetheless, what I really want us to, what was interesting for the past few days and when we've been speaking with people here, has been the reading of that sign as a cross, but more precisely as a religious cross, which even though it is an underlining and certain underlining of the exhibition that we mustn't get away from, as having a quote by San Agustin, as you will see, which is the centerpiece of the show that articulates everything, I wanted to make sure that we can take away that read, that religious read, and go back in time and understand why that show is very much in line to what Stefan Brüggemann has been doing for over the past 25 years, which is, and I'm going to use a big word, you know, the semiotics of his art, and his art is an art of semiotics, which is to look into symbols, a study of symbol, a study of sign, a study of language. Stefan's art is rooted in language, and I think that really shows it again, but in a more subtle way than ever in his practice. I was just looking into, Stefan and I have had the pleasure in knowing each other and working together for over 2 decades now. And I was just, as we was preparing for this afternoon conference, well, allocution rather, I got to reread some of my notes over the years. And one of the things that always struck me about his art is that it's rooted in the exhibition. It's about, one thing, for instance, which you love to know is that Stefan never had a studio. He doesn't have a studio practice. He makes an art for a show. And that's something essential, I think, because I was looking into how he roots his art in response to a context, a situation, with a vocabulary that has been developed for over 20 years now.
I'm going to borrow your pen.
Sorry?
Thank you.
Yeah, go. And yes, so that has been rooted on over 20 years, that an art of language that really takes a form, a shape, which is that of the first piece that welcomes you, Online Disconnected, that has been, is what I would call a signature style over the years. But what's interesting about what we have now is that with this, I'm sorry, I've tried to change my settings with the computer many times, and it doesn't work, so I just have to press back all the time. Anyway, so what's interesting about that is that even though this is the origin of his art, really vinyl text on wall, for the past over 15 years, he's also implemented within his work the work of graffiti, really taking that language from the streets into the art. But what was important to me when I was thinking about what I wanted to open this talk with is nothing, blank, absence, or as one of my favorite pieces, this is not supposed to be here. Stefan's work has always been rooted in a definition of something that is not there, something that is absent, something that is, and hence the reason that despite or furthermore or above and beyond the fact that his work is rooted in a conceptual frame of work, which started, you know, let's take the American avant-garde of 1969 with the great times of Robert Barry, Lawrence Weiner, and Joseph Kosuth, and Douglas Wobler and others all around Sigala. But what's interesting about that is how Stefan's language, even though it's rooted within this grand trajectory, within this grand tradition, has been really able to take it somewhere else. And nonetheless, he shares one of the main concerns of an artist like Robert Barry, for instance, which is that desire to understand what is not there. How can I define nothing? How can I'm sorry, I find his work extremely funny as well, hence the reason why we keep on working together, I guess. Always surprising, always funny. So these are actually a series of pieces that Stefan has been developing and accumulating over the years. And I wanted to have that as a backdrop for us to think differently what we have, maybe not so much differently as much, but to give us the kind of the roots of his art, as simply as that. And so as I've said, that desire to define nothing is very much what we have here. Even though, for the first time, when Stefan was preparing that show, which first started at the Pinacoteca, the National Museum in Mexico City, where the show first was in February of this year, and then, which was a complete different incarnation of it, as in there was 15 paintings, we have only 1/3. I'd argue we have the best third, though, better here. But also, it was within a context, and as I've said, Stefan never works with a studio, but then Stefan also responds to architecture and context. And the context of the exhibition in Mexico City was that of yeah, well, I guess it was really the religious painting that populates so much of that museum. But for him, what he tried to do really was to abstract a sign, which is to take a sign out of context, and by doing so, giving it a new context. And here, quite literally, I wanted to take that further in two ways, as we'll talk about afterwards, which is one, the text piece at the entrance, online disconnected, and we'll go into that after. And the second part was the mirror. But let's stick for the 1 second within the context, and what happens when an exhibition is decontextualized, so to say, thus giving it a new meaning, a new context, a new environment for it to be. What was interesting when we started working on that show here was really the, and I say that with love, it's a small room. And thus it was allowing us to create a concise environment, to create an environment where we're here to contemplate, to look at. But to look at is to think. And one of the texts that I wrote about Stefan was called Learn to Read, Stefan Brüggemann's exhibition, which was a take on Lawrence Weiner famous Learn to Read art, as we have all learned to read art. And for me, what was interesting about that was trying to think about how the exhibition itself, which is a medium and which is something I absolutely love working with Stefan here, allowed us to revisit that, and not so much revisit the cross, the religious cross, but very much that sign. What are these, and hence the genius of the artist, what are these two lines, which is literally the title of the show here. So what is interesting to me is to put in context this, this structural understanding of what literally the two lines that form the cross are, to give a structural understanding of how the paintings were made. The paintings come from a vocabulary that has also been developing for the past 10 years, which is mainly the use of the gold leaf. And again, a very, which is a use rooted in art history, rooted in all these fantastic paintings. I had the pleasure of spending half of the day yesterday at the Prado. And what do you see about gold leaves there? And it was interesting to me to think about, okay, how do we have a dialogue between the materiality of the painting and this sign? And really, again, I'm going to try to use the word sign more than cross, because for me, this is really where the show is rooted, is in this abuse of this possibility. When I was thinking about how to bring that forward, for instance, within the when I was writing about that show, what was interesting to me is that the cross is usually, when you have a pirate treasure map, and the cross is where the treasure's buried. So, it indicates something. Or, as a piece that Stefan's been really rooted, another understanding of a nothing is to cancel. And of course, we all know about the cancel culture within which we live. And all this word is really interesting because the cross is what cancels, You cross a text, you cross a word, you cross what have you. Anyway, and so it's interesting to me to take it from there and to really take the structure of the cross away from the religious understanding of what it is, to think about, well, what if it was a plus rather than a cross? And one of the good things also to use gold leaves is that they're squares. So you can actually count how many, on each side of each bracket of the lines there are, and most often you realize that they're equal rather than longer on the bottom as they usually are. So that was interesting also to think about that in terms of, if it's a cross, it's a plus. If it's a plus, it's an addition. And if it's an addition, then we go back into the fields of mathematics rather than religion. And so that was an interesting one to me, which was, of course, the multiplication and the addition being brought back together. And here, by this, we multiply by 5 the meanings of Stefan's work here. Another thing which was interesting, of course, if we have the cross, we have within the mirrors, we have a reversal of the cross, but a reversal of a plus is still a plus. And so, therefore, we don't have a doubling of things somehow. But let me, that's also a very good one, because fucking up the program is an invitation to think that things are not literal, and I want things really to be fucked up. Look at that. Should we try to be political? It has to be nice, and to be religious, as it has to be nice too. Words that become pictures, pictures that becomes words, which is interesting. Today, for the first time, if Stefan did not use his own words, his own quotes, but he quoted Saint Augustine, which is a nice sign. Faith is to believe what you do not see. The reward of this faith is to see what you believe, which is also exactly what it's all about. Because for Stefan, I really don't think that is, even though, as I've said, keep on, yes, the roots within religious art is obvious, but for Stefan it was more the roots within the believing art. And that is something that we must have. This is definitely... Oh, and maybe you're asking, but where is the artist? Well, I guess we know why. He can't explain and he won't even try. But he'll be there afterwards, for sure. Oh, these are the entire statements, and the one that we have in the entrance is part of that series, hence the reason I wanted to have them on the wall to start with. Again, nothing, the use of nothing that we keep on coming back to is essential to me, because that nothing becomes a signifier within the context of this exhibition. And by insisting on that, as I really lay it fast, and I know, I'm sorry about that, it'll be looser, it'll be calmer, or maybe not, maybe you go even deeper and grill me. But I want that nothing really to take us away from a field to open up all fields, if that makes sense. So that's why I show this to you. That's, I guess, that's actually one of Stefan's iconic work. All my ideas are imported, all my products are exported, all my explanations are rubbish. And most probably if he was here to listen to me right now, he would say my explanations are rubbish. Delete, delete nothing, delete cross, cross cancel. Well, that's punk. Black letters, which is what we have literally on the, and make sure that you take one of those by taking that, and having signed by the artist, you have a piece by Stefan with you now. Everyone should. No and misunderstanding, no. Again, that statement, that desire. And the reason why I show you that is really I want you to picture in your mind an equivalence between each and every of the word statements that we look at and the pieces we have inside. No problem. You know, just try to replace maybe the cross by each and every of them. Are they equal? Are they replaceable? Are they, are they the same? Right? Which is really interesting because I was mentioning the idea of the cross, the multiplication. Stefan's latest series of works is actually an equal on a monochrome piece. And then ideology is over. I think that's interesting when we have a work which is so deeply rooted in a sign which maybe is something else than what we think. Always.
Es buenísimo.
Yeah. But I just want to end up, and then we can open up together, which is this one. Online disconnected. And really for me that was the ways that we, by having that piece that invites you here, it's think of that exhibition as a game of reversal, a game of taking things apart and taking things upside down, quite literally. And by having the piece here on the wall, on the red wall, online disconnected, well, we have to know that when Stefan did that show at the Pinacoteca in Mexico, the walls were red, not black. And we wanted to have that inversion here, and nonetheless, by having the use of the red as a color, to have this constant referral, and as you'll see anyway, then Stefan uses two colors in his pieces here, the red and the black. So it's also interesting to read of them in terms of formal values, in terms of formal acceptations to what they are, but online disconnected is really very much all about that. It's really, if we want to see it as I write in that little introduction, you know, if we want to think about the online disconnected in terms of our new religion that we're constantly on our telephones, you know, being connected to, by being online, we disconnect from reality, and when we're in reality, we disconnect from the online, and so therefore, we always lose. We're never in the right place by being in either. And I think that was an interesting take to really have with that exhibition here, which is an invitation for us to be surrounded around within the paintings, in the space, and to try to feel a connection to them. And by being disconnected to the obvious read, which is that of the religious read, but also to be connected to them in terms of what is it when I take away the meaning of that symbol and break it down. And so therefore, I thought it was an interesting thing to just, and to conclude very simply, just to think of this exhibition as a word exhibition again. Word with the pieces by St. Augustine, of course, but also just these pluses, seeing them for what they are or what they can be. And I think this exhibition is very much an invitation into that.
Excellent. Well, I think, perdón, yo creo que es una introducción bastante completa. Muchas gracias porque nos metiste de lleno en el universo de Stefan. ¿Ya? Yo lo que me quedo pensando, sobre todo partiendo del hiperpoema de Online Disconnected, creo que una de las preocupaciones de Stefan siempre es su obra tiene mucho de una crítica mordaz, con mucho humor, de la sociedad y del consumismo en el que vivimos y de cómo estamos continuamente acelerados. Y a mí esa cita, Online Disconnected, me recuerda un poco al poeta maldito Baudelaire. En todos lugares estamos, menos aquí, ¿no? Ese deseo que tenemos siempre de escapar. Y volviendo a lo que tú mencionas de tratar de leer su obra de diferentes ángulos, creo que también una constante de Stefan es que él le gusta generar la duda. O sea, él piensa, el espectador tiene que enfrentarse a la obra sin que le señalen a dónde o qué tiene que pensar. Y claro, uno piensa en una cruz, y lo decías, Matthew, y piensas inmediatamente en religión, pero creo que uno de los valores y de las cuestiones más importantes en la obra de Stefan es justamente las capas que eso te da, que puedes pensar en tantas cosas como tú quieras. Pero hay algo más, hablabas de la hoja de oro que se utiliza. Yo creo que me gustaría hacer hincapié en el material, porque la contraposición de los materiales en su obra también es muy importante, porque la hoja de oro te habla pues de riqueza, incluso de cuestiones religiosas en donde se usa, de opulencia, mientras que el graffiti es un medio totalmente contrario, contradictorio, que también es algo muy particular de Stefan, siempre esta contradicción en lo que dice para generar y para sacarnos de la duda. Entonces, claro, por algo la cruz es negra, por algo el fondo es de oro, y esa contradicción es lo que nos lleva a nosotros a poder repensar la fórmula de la cruz y la fórmula de un símbolo tan sencillo como dos cruces, en muchísimas maneras de entender el cruce de dos culturas, el cruce de dos mundos, el cruce de la contradicción entre la pobreza y la riqueza, la cruz que hablabas en matemáticas, la cruz de los mapas. O sea, creo que no estamos para decirles qué pensar, porque esa es la idea con cualquier arte, ¿no? Pero sí para abrir la puerta y decir, aquí hay mucho. Parece que no, porque la belleza es que es muy simple, pero en realidad hay muchísimo que escarbar. Pero yo quisiera que habláramos algo que no te pregunté, o que no hablaste, es el título. O bueno, lo mencionaste brevemente, pero 2 líneas, fe, ¿por qué se escogió ese título?
Yeah.
¿Y qué es lo que simboliza?
Well, I think because there is 2 lines, and it's about faith. And but which faith? And I think that's the question also. Yeah. Even though it's a very iconic sentence by St. Augustine, something that we've all read, or which is and also which is very poetic in its writing, it questions seeing, believing, and faith. And so, but for him, what Stefan was really intrigued or taken by was to say, well, but is my faith in religion, is my faith in art? And when we spoke in preparation of that show, he would always refer to my faith is my faith in art. But that faith also was interesting for him to have to be there and to find it within the title. I think is actually a very smart move, you know, because to have you by doing that, a bit like what I was saying earlier on, you contextualize something. It's in bracket faith, but the two lines are not, and the two lines is what we focus on. You could have called the show cross faith, you know, which would have been another ways of cancelling it more literally. But here, by calling it two lines, is really it's a way to put us in a direction to something. It's a way to make us understand that this is not what it is or what it looks like it is. And yeah, so I think that's why the faith is more a qualifier than anything. It really qualifies these two lines, but it doesn't give you the answer as to which one it is. Even though, yeah, it might seem obvious, and I think it's get more interesting when we break things down, and hence for me, I keep on going back to the online disconnected piece in order to read that work. So therefore, it's really that back and forth that seems to give clarity to the actual word faith.
Claro. También creo que sin que hablemos, sin que sea Stefan antirreligioso, que no tiene nada que ver, creo que también él en muchas de sus declaraciones ha dicho que él considera que la nueva religión es el consumismo.
Yeah, I didn't say he was non-religious.
No, por eso lo estoy aclarando, yeah. ¿No? Porque, o sea, no tiene nada que ver, es una relectura que, entonces, creo que es importante que también estemos conscientes de la crítica social que él hace, y me parece fundamental, Mathieu, que tenga humor, porque creo que sin humor es muy difícil realmente que toquemos ciertos temas que a veces les tenemos miedo o que causan mucha impresión, y lo que Mathieu logra con ese humor es llegar más hondo, ¿no?
Yeah, no, absolutely, because he wanted to, and that was one of the amusing discussions we've had, and he says, well, what's interesting, if I use a spray can to spray paint that put by San Agustin or the cross, it's a bit as if, you know, usually a graffiti will be a call for action, a religion, or a big fuck off, a big fuck you in the street. And here it's as if the religion himself was being the one who has to use this means of existing within this world. So it was just quite amusing to have San Agustin spray painted onto the canvas as well. So there was here another layer of that we can look into that, which is this, yeah, what does it mean to spray can something, to spray paint something like that? You know, the actual...
Mathieu, perdóneme, hablábamos de, tú mencionabas un dato muy curioso, que Stefan no tiene estudio y que trabaja pensando en la exhibición, siendo que esta exhibición fue exhibida hace unos meses, en febrero, en el MUNAL, en México, y que además él la hizo pensando en el acervo novohispano que tiene el MUNAL, y para tener una conversación entre arte contemporáneo y el acervo. ¿Cómo se recontextualiza esto en España y en un lugar como el que nos alberga hoy, Casa México?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's great. That's all about I have a translator, as you can tell, and the reason I'm saying that is because somehow you have to translate the and we spoke about the word translation, but what it is just translate an exhibition into another, rather than how is it to transpose an exhibition into another. For instance, and for me, that is what become the challenge. You know, well, what's interesting about it is how we can think of the exhibition that he was doing was rooted, as I explained earlier on, into a really specific context, which was that of the collection of the Pinacoteca. Here, of course, the collection is not there. The meanings are, the relations will be by what we tell you about it. But when you come to the exhibition itself, then we wanted really to consider that as an installation, as an environment, something that really you come here and you confront yourself. So that's why you'll see one of the work has been put in the corner, and it's just because it really forces you to come close to it. It really forces you to put your nose against it. And that was, for instance, one way of contextualizing it. The other one is the mirrors. And the mirrors wanted to really have that reflection, you know, what happened when we mirror a plus or a cross. When we mirror a plus, it stays the same. When we mirror a cross, it's inverted. And of course, through, you know, my very basic religious upbringing, we all remember that St. Peter's refused to be crucified the way that the Christ was. And so it was interesting to have that game of, by inverting the view of the paintings, you invert the cross and the sign. And so therefore you have another reference, which could be rooted within religion, but also you have a reference of saying, okay, what's the materiality of the painting, therefore? We're looking at them for paintings that really, I keep on joking that, hey, we have our Rothko Chapel here. And because it's all about that, it's really creating a small environment when we look for what they are, paintings. And that was something that was also really interesting to me, that we confront ourselves to them for what they are as paintings. You know, you talk about materiality earlier on, of course, you know, there is a canvas stretch on a stretcher, overlaid by gold leaves, and a spray painting with directly with the artist not having the opportunity to do it twice, so to say. Once everything has been set in motion, it is done. And so that's also what's interesting about that, is then you see the longevity or the timeless aspect of the gold leaves, as I was mentioning earlier, and you also see the immediacy of that, just something being spray painted right into that. So for you, so I know it's a complicated way to answer to a simple question. How is it to bring something here? I think it was all about that. It was really to see, okay, how do we do that? And then, from then on, how do we try to read them in a different ways? I guess, not the painting somehow, but the sign, as I was really doing in my lengthy introduction. One of the things which is important, let's think of a piece that I kept on coming back to mind, that I mentioned Stefan being what I would say a post-conceptual artist. Well, his love to these artists is really signified in, I think it was, in the mid-2000s. He did a piece with Robert Barry, the American artist, where called Shift, and which is that they each gave a work to the project, Stefan and Robert Barry, but with a contract that tells you that the authenticity of this work shifts every 5 years. So Stefan's work is Stefan's work for 5 years, and then for the following 5 years, it'll be Robert Barry's work, and for the following 5 years, it'll be Stefan. So, and you say, if you're the owner of that piece, you have to look at exactly when you are to see who is the author of the work. And somehow it's about that, because, will the paintings shift their meaning when we move them from a place to another? There was a really lovely quote by Hans-Ulrich Obrist, who's a curator, the artistic director of the Serpentine in London. And he said, well, when you have an exhibition that travels without changing from A to B, then it's nothing other than Starbucks. And I always like that. That's the kind of little quote that really that works on me. And yeah, that's true. So how do you make it more than just a repetition, or more than an affirmation of to hammer in a statement? And I think here that act of transposition was extremely interesting, and that's why I say thank you to the Casa de México for allowing us to play that game.
Well, sí, dijiste varias cosas que me interesaron. Para empezar, citas a Rothko y el sentimiento que te da como una capilla de Rothko, y ya lo verán, pero sí la exposición tiene algo muy íntimo que me parece que impacta muchísimo en la forma en que entendemos la obra, porque si hay algo casi religioso en ello, sin que tenga que ver con religión, una vez más, pero la forma en que fue montada, que está además, de veras felicidades a Casa México, porque lo han hecho de maravilla, y a ti, por supuesto, pero la combinación del rojo con el espejo sí nos crea un sentimiento, como lo decías, de capilla de Rothko, muy íntimo y muy reflexivo. O sea, nos invita mucho a cuestionarnos. Yo creo que es muy simple y sin embargo nos invita a cuestionarnos. Pero también decías tú que es verdad, el significado cambia. A mí en este caso me parece que el arte definitivamente no tiene nacionalidad, pero los artistas sí. Y siendo él mexicano, y esta obra que se presenta, y además que fue hecha para el MUNAL con el acervo que hablábamos de arte yo creo que esta conversación de traer algunos de sus obras ahora a España, también, sin lugar a dudas, nos lleva a pensar en eso, en una conversación, el cruce de dos culturas, en la conquista, en todo lo que estos países tenemos de historia. Entonces, bueno, es una capa más que se le agrega, como bien decías, que siempre se le agrega. Pero como ya tenemos muy poco tiempo, yo te quería preguntar, se ha dicho, bueno, varias cosas. La primera es, tú y Stefan llevan muchas exhibiciones juntos, han trabajado en varias exhibiciones, sin embargo, me decían que esta es la primera vez que trabajas en un solo show. Desde que lo conoces, que si no estoy mal, son casi 20 años, de que ustedes dos se conocen y comparten, que han trabajado juntos y comparten amistad. ¿Cuál dirías tú que es la constante que ha predominado en su trabajo y qué crees que ha variado desde el primer día que viste una obra de él hasta ahora?
Well, funnily enough, that's why I wanted to start with earlier on by insisting on this idea of nothing, blank, absence, which is one of my obsessions as a curator and an exhibition maker, and that's something that we really shared from the onset. Stefan has done many work articulating that notion of nothing, which is a beautiful notion to think about. I've had the pleasure of co-curating a show at the Pompidou Center, which was a retrospective of empty exhibitions. So we really share a really strong bond, art bond in that regard. And so that has been I'd say this is really art is a constant thread for us. Well, for instance, it's been interesting, as you quite rightly mentioned, I double-checked that as well. So when was the first time we worked together? But we have also a love for books, a love for text pieces, and so the reason I was really insisting that we give that away to people, that everybody can have that work, that it's a ways of distributing, dissemination, something that was ever so important. Also, when you're a curator and an artist, there's a beautiful ongoing relationship that happened, and I think I had, for instance, it's gifted me in shows that I've done some amazing work. One of them I was reading, thinking about earlier on, called, it was a show I did in Reykjavik in Iceland, a group exhibition called Exhibitions Ruins. Anyway, but the piece he did was fantastic. It was just, he told me in the collection there was a Dan Flavin, a light neon piece, and his piece was just unplug it. And it was great, because you unplug a Dan Flavin and you just have two boring neons. And funnily enough, this neons was making a cross again. But anyway, so that's, you see, and the beauty of, I guess maybe also the beauty of friendship is to be constant while surprising each other. And honestly, this exhibition's been that. This exhibition, some might say, is super dramatic, and the black, the red, the lighting very low and everything. Yeah, it's almost theatrical, but that's what makes it strong. And of course, tomorrow, when you'll see these works in a different context, they won't be shown like that. So it's really this idea of, hey, what about we try that? And that was the beauty of that. And maybe also to give that lines, online disconnected, one line disconnected, two lines reconnected as a cross. So you saw that it was just this desire to be allowed to do this game of words, this game of symbols, this game of lines also that friendship is rooted in my admiration for his work. That's obvious. I hope by speaking about him today once more. And I think it's about continuing in a different way.
Muy bien. No me contestaste muy bien mi pregunta. Te me fuiste por la rama, pero quedó muy bien. Pues creo que se nos acaba el tiempo porque nos vamos a abrir a preguntas. Matthew, sobre todo si hay algo... ¿Ya? Sí, ¿no? Que me hicieron señas. No sé si alguno tiene preguntas acerca de la exhibición de Stefan, de Matthew.
And I'll try not to answer the right way neither.
Yo creo que...
Yeah, I'm curious about the playfulness of the artist. Do you think that's a constant approach that he has throughout his work, or is just this playful approach towards this particular exhibit?
I think he'll disagree with the use playfulness. I think he'll use the word more directness himself. So it's really me saying that. But I see, for me, playful is not a wrong thing at all. It's, it's interesting. But yeah, I think what's really interesting about that is got a, it's really interesting. For instance, Stefan is a Mexican artist who was born in speaking Spanish, but he only uses English in his text pieces. He only used Spanish for his very first one back in 1995 or 4, and since then he's never revisited them in a different language. So in order to answer that, that's interesting to me, because therefore there's already a work of translation going on into his work. But that work of translation allows Stefan to have an immense freedom with words. I mean, and some of them are broken in ways that you would not break words, and that I'm looking for one right now, but that wouldn't instant free with a T like that, you wouldn't do that. But that's he's got a freedom to that which allows him to do so. So I find that playful, but also very rigorous and very formal. So again, did not answer your question, but I said something.
I just wanted to ask, when you design those mirrors that allow you to be in the middle of the painting, and then you see yourself, and then you see the painting upwards. Mm-hmm. So did you design it that way so that the public could be part of the work?
No, it's even better than that. I think it's the technicians who designed it. And we love that, because we wanted to have a mirror ceiling. We couldn't do that for just practical reasons. But I really was adamant in really working with that mirror state. A mirror state or mirror feeling, this inverting the world up, and so we see the world upside down, and nonetheless we see the world the right way up. And I wanted really to try that out. And then and that's you got to confront yourself with reality. Reality came when the technician proposed us that. I made a different suggestion, so another addition, because with Stefan we really wanted to have a reflection on the floor as well, not just the painting, but the whole environment. And so by doing that, it was a game, a very playful game of a back and forth that came to that proposition here. So I wish we could have a very conceptual rationale to that, but it was more an experiential way of working.
¿No? Oye, antes de que acabemos, yo tengo una duda personal. En muchos artículos que hablan de Stefan, se le califica como un artista postconceptual y con una actitud punk destructivista. ¿Estás de acuerdo? ¿Y por qué?
Punk, yes, not destructivist. Even though there'll be some element that may lead to understanding of destruction, it will never be. Stefan is a pure art lover, but punk definitely. Yeah, that's also one of the things that really bonds us. It's our loves of punk and music. For instance, all of the pieces that I've shown you this evening, we've had the pleasure of offering them, of inviting the punk icon Iggy Pop to read them all for one of his exhibitions that we did that he did in London, and so therefore it was great to go to Miami and work with Iggy on that. So it was really confronting ourselves to the punk ethos, which is ever so strong for him and for me. And so I think there's this attitude. It can be a really formal reading of what punk is in terms of counterculture, which is ever so important to him. There's of course the reading of music, as I've just explained, but also that attitude is really what roots Stefan into reality and into a challenge of reality. And that's something that we really share together. I've had the great opportunity and pleasure in working closely with one of the punk icons, Alan Vega, which is another from Suicide, the band Suicide, and so which was another ways for us to bond together around that. And I think when you have that aspect of, you say destruction, I was going to say disrespect, but a slight or proposition of disrespectfulness, which is somehow what that exhibition can be seen as well. because we've had some interesting heated arguments with some people who come in here already, trying to see is this being an insult to religion, which of course was not part of my mind, but it is interesting because you use a punk language as that, it will be read like that, and so that's definitely for me. Yeah, when I use the word, I think minimal punk, it's really all about that. It's really rooting his vocabulary as an artist within the minimal sphere. That's why I also quote Barnett Newman and that great quote by Gregory Battock when he says a minimal. Let me write it properly. A minimal statement need not be minimal in terms of subject matter, which he was writing for Barnett Newman when he did his only retrospective during his lifetime at his only museum show, I beg your pardon, during his lifetime at the Guggenheim, curated by Lawrence Holloway. And what was interesting there was that you have the ethos of the minimal artist, so to say, doing overloading by quoting the 14th Station of the Christ. Of the cross as well. And so it was interesting for me to revisit this statement in light of Stefan's art, and especially that exhibition, to think once more, one last time, these are paintings. Let's look at them as such.
Excelente. Pues muchísimas gracias.
Lorena,
Muchas felicidades, Mathieu, por tu trabajo.
Lorena, perdón. Una última
perdón.
pregunta de un...
Sí.
Espera.
Gracias. Enhorabuena por la exposición. He visto que insistéis mucho sobre la religión, dos líneas, pero de mi punto de vista, yo pensaba también como la cruz, como la muerte, la resurrección. Me pregunté si lo has visto de esta manera también.
Well, I mean, you cannot think of the cross in the religious term without thinking that. You're right, absolutely right. Yes, you're right. And if we keep on coming back to the religious, I was trying to also offer up tonight ways out, so to say. But no, you're absolutely right, yes. And somehow that's what happened. The show died in Mexico at the end of February and was reborn here tonight at Casa de Mexico. So it is all a constant cycle.
Cierto. ¿Ya?
Okay.
Bueno, pues si quieren, yo en nombre de Casa México, Susana, Vania, Jimena, que no está aquí, muchas gracias a todo el equipo. Gracias de nuevo, muchas felicidades, Mathieu. Mission accomplished. Quedó muy bien. Y gracias a todos por venir.
Yeah. And thanks to Stefan.
Por supuesto.
Gracias. Hey, thank you.
Thank you.